Leadership isn't learned in classrooms. It's learned in the moments you almost got it wrong and chose differently. Welcome to Leadership in Practice. Short stories, real situations, and the shifts that change everything. Episode 1, The Call, a short story about a directive leader, a courageous team member, and the moment everything shifted.
I used to think that being in control meant having all the answers, that if I just told people what to do, clearly, directly, without a lot of back and forth, we'd move faster, get more done, stay ahead. And for a long time, it worked. At least, I thought it did. My name is Sarah, VP of Operations at a mid-sized logistics company. I'd been in leadership for 12 years. I'd turned around 2 struggling divisions. I had a reputation for being sharp, decisive, and, let's be honest, a little intimidating. I wore that last one almost like a badge. It was a Tuesday, which is important only because Tuesdays were when I ran my weekly team call. 8 people, cameras on, agenda distributed the night before. I ran that call like a military briefing, 45 minutes, no more. I'd go through each update, ask a pointed question or two, assign actions and close it out. No meandering, no how is everyone feeling check-ins, just work. That particular Tuesday, we were behind on a major implementation rollout. 2 weeks behind, and I had opinions about why and what needed to happen next. So I opened the call and I just started. I didn't even say good morning, I think. All right, let's get into it. The Westport implementation is behind, and I need everyone to understand that this is not acceptable heading into Q3. Marcus, your team owns weeks 3 through 5 of the plan. What happened? I could see the faces on the grid. Some of them went very still. Marcus started talking, gave me a reasonable explanation about a dependency with the tech vendor. Legitimate. Honestly, not his fault. But I cut him off halfway through. Marcus, I don't need the backstory. I need to know what you're doing today to fix it. Who else is affected by this? James, are you tracking? Lisa, what's the downstream impact? And just like that, the conversation had moved on. Marcus, mid-sentence, sat back in his chair. I barely noticed. We got through the agenda. Actions were assigned. I closed the call 4 minutes early, which I was quietly pleased about. And then something unexpected happened. A message appeared in my chat. Private. From a woman named Priya. She was one of my senior project leads. Quiet, thorough, very rarely the first to speak. Exactly the kind of person I probably overlooked more than I should have. The message said, Sarah, do you have 10 minutes this week? I'd like to share something with you. It's about these Tuesday calls. I stared at it. My first instinct, and I'm not proud of this, was mild irritation. I had 17 things on my plate. Something about the calls sounded like a complaint dressed up politely, but I messaged back, tomorrow, 4 p.m. I didn't think much about it overnight, but I noticed, and this is strange to admit, I noticed I was slightly braced for it. Like part of me already knew something was coming that I didn't want to hear. The next afternoon, Priya joined the video call, just the 2 of us. She looked calm, prepared, a little nervous maybe, but holding it. She said, Thank you for making time. I want to say first that I really respect you and the way you lead this team, and I also want to be honest with you about something I've observed, because I think it matters. I nodded, said nothing. Yesterday on the call, she said, when Marcus was explaining the vendor dependency, you cut him off before he finished. And then the conversation moved to me and James, and I watched Marcus for the rest of the call. He went completely quiet. He didn't offer a single idea, even during the parts that directly involved his work stream. Priya paused. That's the situation, she said. The impact, at least what I observed, was that it felt like his perspective wasn't welcome. And I think that might be happening more broadly. People are starting to come to calls prepared to receive instructions, not to problem solve together. And I think we're losing something because of that. I had been in boardrooms with executives twice my seniority. I had delivered bad news to investors. I had sat across the table from union reps and not flinched. But something about that moment, the quiet directness of it, the way she was looking at me like she was genuinely trying to help me, not attack me, it landed differently. I didn't get defensive. I wanted to. Part of me started to compose the counterargument in my head. I'm efficient. We're a high-performing team. People know I value results. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said, "How long have you been noticing this?" And she said gently, "A while." That word stayed with me, a while. Which meant this wasn't about one bad call. It meant there had been a pattern, visible to my team, invisible to me. And if Priya had noticed it, thoughtful, professional Priya, who had stayed anyway, who was sitting here trying to help me, then others had noticed it too. I asked her if she thought people were afraid to push back in meetings. She didn't answer immediately. She chose her words carefully. "I think people have learned," she said, "that pushing back takes a lot of energy and rarely changes the outcome. So they've stopped trying." I thought about Marcus, about the way he sat back in his chair, and I realized I had done that, not once, not accidentally, consistently, methodically. I had trained my own team to be passive. In trying to be decisive, I had made them smaller. I want to be careful here, because leadership transformation stories can sound very neat and tidy in the retelling, like there's a revelation, and then everything changes. It didn't happen that way. What happened was slower and more uncomfortable. After the call with Priya, I sat with it for a few days. I went back and watched the recording of Tuesday's call. Our company archived them, and I made myself watch without justifying anything, just watching, and I saw it. I saw how fast I moved, how little room I left. I saw Marcus start a sentence and stop. I saw a couple of people look down when I asked a direct question, not because they were thinking, but because they were hoping I'd just move on. It looked nothing like the team I thought I was leading. The team I thought I was leading was sharp and agile. What I saw on that recording was a team that had learned to hide. The following Tuesday, I opened the call differently. No agenda. Well, I had an agenda, but I didn't start with it. I said, "Before we get into updates, I want to acknowledge something. Last week I cut Marcus off before he finished. That wasn't good leadership. Marcus, I'd actually like to hear the full picture of the vendor situation now, if you're open to it." The silence that followed was about 3 seconds long. It felt like 3 minutes. Marcus looked at me, and then he said, "Yeah, sure, let me walk you through it." And he did. And in that walkthrough, he mentioned a workaround his team had already prototyped, something I would never have known about, because I hadn't given him space to get to it. It cut 2 weeks off our revised timeline. 2 weeks. Sitting right there inside a conversation I had shut down. I talked to Priya again about a month later, not because there was a problem, just to tell her what had happened. She smiled and said, "I almost didn't send that message." I asked her why she did. She said, "Because I thought you could handle it. And because I didn't want to keep showing up to meetings feeling like I'd left half of myself in the hallway." I've thought about that line more times than I can count. That's what directive leadership extracts from people, without ever meaning to. It doesn't shout. It doesn't threaten. It just moves so fast and leaves so little room that eventually people learn to shrink themselves to fit the space they're given, and you don't even see it happening, because you are the one who built that space. I'm not a perfect leader. I still move fast. I still have strong opinions. There are moments when I feel the old pull, the urge to just decide and move on. But something shifted in me after that call with Priya. I stopped thinking of silence as efficiency. I started hearing what was in it. And the team I lead now, the same 8 people, same Tuesday call, they show up differently. Not because I gave a speech about psychological safety, not because we did a workshop, but because one person had the courage to tell me the truth, and I had the humility, just barely, to listen.
If there's someone on your team who's gone quiet, it's worth asking yourself whether the room you're running is big enough for them. And if there's something you've been meaning to say to someone above you, it might be worth trusting that they can handle it. Most leaders, when they finally hear it, are grateful, even the ones who seem like they don't want to. Every story in this series begins with a leader who thought they had it figured out, because that's usually where the real learning starts. In the next episode, we'll meet a leader who discovers that the strategy everyone agreed to wasn't actually agreed to at all. If you've ever left a meeting thinking alignment was reached and found out later it wasn't, that one's for you. Until then, think about the room you're creating and who might be leaving half of themselves in the hallway.